The sun hung low over the horizon as Alina Petrovna stood at the edge of a dusty road in rural Indonesia. Her once pristine white sneakers were caked with thick brown mud, and her small red suitcase, scuffed and soaked, rested beside her. It had been nearly an hour since her phone had lost signal, and there wasn't a single car in sight. All around her stretched endless rice fields, shimmering under the blue sky like waves on a silent ocean. She had never felt so alone. So lost. Alina, a Russian girl in her mid-20s, had come to Indonesia searching for something, though she couldn't yet name what. All she knew was that she needed to escape the noise of her life back home, the cynicism, the confusion, the void. But now, stranded in the middle of nowhere with only her regret to keep her company, she began to doubt everything. The heat, the language, the unfamiliar smells, all of it overwhelmed her. She took a deep breath, dragged her suitcase forward, and continued walking. The rocky path cut through the rice fields like a vein. Her muscles ached, her clothes clung to her from the humidity, and her mind spiraled into panic. Why had she come here? Just as she reached the verge of collapsing, a figure appeared in the distance. A middle-aged man approached slowly, wearing a white cocoa shirt and a blue checkered sarong. His tanned face was kind, framed by specks of gray in his short beard. He smiled warmly and spoke in Indonesian, gesturing toward a narrow path that led off the road. Alina didn't understand a word. Her instincts screamed caution, but her exhaustion won. With hesitant steps, she followed. The trail narrowed as they walked deeper into the countryside. Tall grass brushed her legs. Crickets chirped. Somewhere ahead, the faint sound of Arabic recitation floated on the breeze. Alina stiffened. Her heart pounded. She had read things, terrible things, about such places. They reached a modest wooden building with a corrugated zinc roof and a simple wooden fence. This was it. A small Islamic boarding school. A pesantren. As Alina stood frozen, unsure whether to flee or stay, a young woman stepped out of the building. She wore a soft pastel dress and a light headscarf. Her sleeves were rolled up, and she carried a basin full of laundry. When she saw Alina, she paused, surprised, but then smiled with genuine warmth. Through gentle gestures, the young woman invited Alina inside the fence. Still wary but too tired to argue, Alina followed. Her suitcase scraped against the pebbled yard. There was no hostility, no staring eyes. Only a quiet sense of curiosity and hospitality. The young woman led her to a small wooden room. There was no bed, no fan, just a thin woven mat, a folded blanket, and the faint scent of wet wood. The walls were lined with old books and neatly stacked boxes. It wasn't much, but it felt safe. Alina sat stiffly in the corner. The woman returned shortly, offering her a glass of water. Alina hesitated, scanning the woman's face for any sign of ill intent. But all she saw was kindness. Her hands trembling, she accepted the glass and took a sip. The water was cold. Refreshing. It slid down her dry throat like medicine. For the first time in days, her body began to unclench. Night fell quickly. Outside, the sky turned dark, and a cool breeze rustled through the wooden slats. From the direction of a small mosque next door, Alina heard the melodic sounds of Quranic recitation. It echoed gently in the still air. She instinctively reached for her pillow and pressed it against her ears. She didn't want to hear it, didn't want to feel anything. But the sound, it wasn't harsh. It wasn't loud. It was soft, rhythmic, and strangely soothing. Exhausted, Alina lay back on the mat. And despite her fear, despite her doubts, she fell asleep peacefully. No nightmares. No pounding heart. Just quiet. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the cracks in the wooden window, painting golden stripes across the floor. Alina woke slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar room. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then it came back to her, the village, the path, the recitation. She sat up. Next to her mat was a small tray with a bowl of warm porridge, a folded napkin, and a clean pair of slippers. She stared at it, touched by the silent gesture. Outside, she heard the playful voices of children, Girls laughing, the clatter of brooms sweeping, someone calling out a verse from memory. She peeked through the door. Dozens of young students in pastel-colored hijabs were cleaning the yard, giggling and working in teams. There was no tension, no fear. Just joy. A gentle knock broke her observation. Another young girl entered, carrying a teapot and 2 simple cups. She smiled, bowed her head slightly, and placed the tray near Alina before sitting a few feet away. The girl didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her presence said enough. Alina gave her a timid smile and nodded in thanks. As she sipped the tea, she looked around the room once more. It was still simple, but now it felt peaceful. She didn't understand why. She wasn't ready to admit anything yet. But her chest felt a little lighter. That afternoon, Alina stepped into the schoolyard. The air was crisp after last night's rain. She watched from a distance as children sat under a large tree, learning to recite the Qur'an. A middle-aged woman in a dark robe and brown hijab approached her. Her eyes were full of warmth. "I'm Ustaza Fatima," she said in soft English. "Welcome. This place is open to everyone." Alina managed a faint smile. For the first time, she didn't feel judged. "Would you like to sit with us?" the Ustaza asked, gesturing to the group under the tree. Alina hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. She sat down on the worn mat beside the children, who welcomed her with innocent grins. One girl, in broken English, pointed at her Qur'an and said, "You read?" Alina shook her head. "No. Just listen." The child nodded and smiled again. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Alina sat among them, silent, observing, open. The sound of the recitation, the wind in the trees, the laughter of children, it all began to blur into something she didn't yet have words for. But her heart felt it. Something had begun. Something new. The sky was washed in golden hues as evening approached, casting a warm light over the village. Alina sat beneath the same tree where young girls were finishing their Qur'an recitations. The final verses echoed softly across the yard, mingling with the chirping of birds returning to their nests. She hadn't said much all day, but her heart had been speaking volumes. Something within her was beginning to soften. She remained there even after the children packed their books and wandered off for the Maghrib prayer. She watched them, how they lined up calmly, how they rinsed their hands and feet with quiet respect, how no one pushed or rushed. There was order, but no oppression. Discipline, but no fear. It felt genuine. When the melodious call to prayer rang out from the nearby mosque, it did not startle her this time. It didn't sound foreign anymore. It sounded like a whisper meant just for the soul. Alina found herself turning toward the source of the sound, eyes gently closing for a moment. Inside the mosque, the girls stood shoulder to shoulder. Alina didn't join them. Not yet. But she sat nearby on the wooden porch, hugging her knees, eyes watching with curiosity, not from fear, but from a strange new feeling, longing. As the prayer ended, the girls trickled out, chattering quietly among themselves. One of them, a small girl in a pale blue scarf, noticed Alina and approached her with a flower in her hand. It was a wild bloom, nothing fancy. But the gesture struck Alina deep in the heart. "For you," the girl whispered. Alina took it gently, her fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you," she managed, blinking quickly. The innocence of that offering shattered the last bit of resistance inside her. That night, Alina sat on the veranda of the dormitory. The stars above twinkled like secrets waiting to be discovered. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and damp earth. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself, but not because she was cold. She was overwhelmed. Not by fear, but by peace. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, Alina felt safe, not just physically, but emotionally. She wasn't being judged, questioned, or expected to perform. She was just being human, accepted. The next morning, the schoolyard buzzed with activity. Girls swept the yard, some prepared breakfast, others folded laundry. Alina rose early, feeling rested. A bowl of hot porridge waited for her by the door again. A small gesture, but it warmed her heart. This time, she picked up the broom. She walked to the corner of the yard and joined the girls, hesitantly at first. They smiled at her but said nothing, as if allowing her to set her own pace. When her broom got stuck between stones, a few girls chuckled, not to mock her, but to share the moment. She laughed too. For the first time, it wasn't forced. Later that morning, Zara, the young woman who had first welcomed Alina with the basin of laundry, invited her to help in the kitchen. Alina followed her, tying her hair up and rolling her sleeves. The kitchen was small, warm, and smelled like ginger and fried bananas. The girls were busy slicing vegetables and stirring porridge in large pots. Zara handed Alina a bowl of spinach and showed her how to clean it. They didn't speak much, but exchanged smiles. Occasionally, Zara pointed out local names for the ingredients and repeated them in slow English. Alina nodded, repeating them back. "Buy 'em," Zara said, holding up spinach. "Buy 'em," Alina echoed with a grin. When the food was ready, everyone gathered on a large mat outside. The meal was simple: steamed rice, vegetables, and sambal. Yet to Alina, it tasted better than anything she'd had in a five-star hotel. Not because of the seasoning, but because of the atmosphere, laughter, stories, teasing, and shared silence. It was family. That afternoon, Zara gave Alina a small book titled The Basics of Islam. It was in English, worn at the edges but full of margin notes and bookmarks. "For you," Zara said softly. "You don't have to read it. Just, if you want." Alina clutched the book gently. She sat under the big tree and opened the first page. The introduction was simple, nothing preachy, just a description of the values of faith, honesty, mercy, and unity. She found herself reading line after line, sometimes pausing to look up at the rustling leaves above her. Somewhere between the words and the wind, something began to settle inside her. That evening, Zara invited her to sit on the mosque porch again. The girls gathered around, chatting about their dreams and aspirations. Alina listened. One girl wanted to be a doctor. Another, a teacher. Zara dreamed of starting a school of her own. They turned to Alina. "What about you?" Zara asked gently. Alina hesitated. "I used to think I wanted success, money, maybe fame. But now, I don't know. Maybe I just want to understand who I really am." Zara smiled. "That's the best journey." Later that night, Alina sat on her mat with the book still in her hands. She opened her notebook, the one she had brought from Russia, and began to write. Her handwriting was slow, careful. She wrote just one sentence. "Maybe all this time, I've been seeing the world wrong." A tear fell on the page. And for the first time, Alina didn't wipe it away. The days that followed moved swiftly, yet peacefully. Alina began waking up before dawn, joining Zara in the kitchen, helping sweep the yard. No one asked her to. It just felt right. She didn't need to pretend. She was still a guest, still a non-Muslim, but no one reminded her of it. They welcomed her with sincerity, not to convert her, but to love her. That morning, Alina sat with Zara under the tree again, going through the book. "What does sabr mean?" she asked, pointing. "Patience," Zara said. "But not just waiting. It means waiting with a heart that trusts." Alina nodded, writing it down. A young Ustaza joined them, bringing a chalkboard and writing some Arabic terms with their English meanings. Alina listened like a child hearing stories for the first time. She didn't understand it all. But she felt it. And feelings, she was learning, didn't always need translations. The soft sunlight of late afternoon stretched lazily across the schoolyard. Alina and Zara walked slowly along the edge of the rice fields, their steps quiet, in rhythm with the rustling leaves and distant chirps of birds. The cool wind brushed their faces gently, carrying with it the earthy scent of damp soil and growing crops. They didn't speak much. But they didn't need to. Alina paused on a raised mound and looked out at the sea of green. It was vast and still. There was something sacred in the silence of it all. She took a deep breath, letting her worries slip away with the breeze. For once, her mind wasn't racing. Her chest wasn't tight. She felt free. Zara, she whispered, her voice hesitant. I want to learn how to pray. Zara stopped in her tracks. Her face lit up with quiet surprise, followed by a wide, heartfelt smile. She didn't say much, just took Alina's hand and gave it a firm, warm squeeze. In that gesture, 1,000 words were exchanged. Support, joy, trust. That night, in the same simple wooden room she had feared on her first night, Alina began learning the basic movements of Salah. Zara sat beside her, demonstrating each motion slowly: takbir, ruku, sujud. She used simple English, repeating words gently, giving Alina time to absorb them. Alina copied each movement carefully, feeling both awkward and honored. She didn't understand every word, but every motion felt like a whisper from her soul. And when she bowed her head to the ground for the first time in prostration, her eyes welled with tears. She couldn't explain it, not yet. But something inside her broke and healed all at once. The following days became a beautiful blur. Alina didn't officially join every prayer, but she began sitting quietly at the back of the mosque, observing. She memorized bits and pieces, took notes, whispered along to short verses. Nobody rushed her. Nobody pressured her. Everything came from within. In the mornings after Fajr prayer, she would sit on the mosque steps with Zara, sipping tea as the sun peeked over the horizon. One morning she tilted her head back to let the golden light warm her face. "I don't know what's happening to me," she said softly. Zara smiled. "It's called peace." Alina chuckled faintly, her eyes watery. "I've never known it before." That day, Ustaza Fatima invited Alina to the small school library. The room was quiet, lined with old wooden shelves stacked with books in Arabic, Indonesian, and a few in English. Dust floated lazily in the air, visible in shafts of sunlight pouring through the window. Alina picked up a book titled Understanding Islam for Beginners. Her fingers trembled as she flipped through the first few pages. The words were simple, clear, but heavy with meaning. She sat on the floor in a corner and read in silence. Every now and then, Zara would lean over and explain a word or phrase. They giggled softly when a misunderstanding led to something funny. There was no formal class, no stiff lectures, just curiosity, warmth, and the rhythm of discovery. By now, Alina had stopped counting the days. Life had slowed down. It wasn't about destinations anymore. It was about presence. One afternoon, Zara and Alina strolled through the garden next to the dormitories. Simple flowers bloomed in clay pots, cared for by the students. Alina was amazed at how something so ordinary could feel so beautiful. She paused near a young student sitting cross-legged on the ground, reading Qur'an out loud in a gentle, melodious tone. Alina watched quietly, mesmerized by the calm and sincerity in his face. It didn't sound like a chant. It didn't sound like a ritual. It sounded like love. That evening, Alina and Zara sat on the dormitory porch, sharing warm banana fritters straight from the kitchen. They laughed and swapped stories, about childhood, about their different worlds, about dreams. Alina suddenly paused and stared ahead. "You know, I used to be scared of all this," she said, almost whispering. Zara nodded, allowing the silence to hold the weight of the words. I thought Islam was cold, harsh, controlling. But now," she turned toward Zara, eyes glistening. "Now I think I was just blind." That night, Alina couldn't sleep. She lay on her mat staring at the ceiling, the sound of distant crickets accompanying her thoughts. She rose, lit a small lamp, and opened her notebook. Page after page of scribbles, Arabic words, reflections, and questions stared back at her. She turned to a clean page and began to write a letter. "To the old me," she wrote. "You didn't know any better. You were afraid of what you didn't understand. But now you're starting to see." She closed the notebook and pressed it to her chest, tears falling silently. For the first time in her life, she wasn't ashamed of crying. The next morning, she put on a simple white robe. Zara entered the room carrying a white hijab and paused in the doorway, struck by the sight of her friend sitting calmly by the window. Alina smiled faintly. I think I'm ready. Zara didn't ask what she meant. She simply stepped forward and helped Alina put on the hijab, adjusting it gently. Their eyes met in the mirror. No words were needed. It was a moment stitched from pure understanding. Outside, the school was buzzing. Students prepared the mosque, cleaned the courtyard, and filled the air with laughter. No one knew exactly what was happening, but everyone felt it. Alina walked slowly toward the mosque. The steps felt heavy and light at the same time. She wasn't shaking, but her heart thudded hard in her chest. Not from fear, but from the magnitude of what was about to happen. At the entrance, Ustaza Fatima was waiting. She took Alina's hands in hers and guided her to the front of the prayer hall. Sitting down, Alina took a deep breath. The students gathered quietly, the room bathed in soft light. Then, with trembling lips and a steady heart, Alina whispered, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Tears streamed down her face. But they weren't tears of confusion or fear. They were tears of release. The chains of ignorance and hatred had shattered. She was free. The students embraced her one by one, no loud cheers, no performances. Just hugs, smiles, and whispered Alhamdulillah. The love in the room was unlike anything Alina had ever known. That night, as stars filled the sky, Alina stood in the courtyard, barefoot, staring upward. Zara came and stood beside her. No words passed between them. Just hands held tightly, hearts overflowing, and a new life beginning. The sun had barely risen when Alina stepped out onto the porch of the dormitory. The sky was still painted with strokes of lavender and pale gold, and the dew on the grass shimmered in the early light. She breathed in deeply. Air had never felt this clean before. Her heart was calm, her steps steady. Today, she was no longer the same woman who had stood frozen on a dusty road weeks ago. She was now Alina, the Muslimah, a woman reborn not in name alone, but in heart, in soul, in purpose. The courtyard of the Islamic boarding school was already coming to life. Students moved about sweeping the yard, washing dishes, giggling quietly as they worked in pairs. And in the kitchen, as always, Zara was slicing vegetables with practiced ease. She looked up and smiled when Alina entered, this time not as a guest, not even as just a friend, but as a sister. Alina tied her scarf tightly and rolled up her sleeves. What are we making today? She asked, her tone brighter than usual. Simple soup, Zara said. But we'll make it special. They worked in unison. Chopping, stirring, seasoning. Occasionally, Zara corrected Alina's pronunciation of a new word, and they both burst into laughter. Flour dusted their robes, and the smell of garlic and ginger filled the air. The kitchen echoed with joy. After breakfast, Alina found herself walking to the same tree where she had once sat in silence, just observing. Today, she sat there with a small Qur'an in her hand. It was a gift from Ustaza Fatima, a simple English translation with side-by-side Arabic. Her name was written on the first page in beautiful cursive, next to the date of her shaida. She opened to a random page and began to read softly. Indeed, with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Shar 94:6. She paused, staring at the words. That verse wrapped itself around her heart like a warm shawl. It described her journey perfectly, from skepticism and fear, through confusion, to this moment of stillness. By mid-morning, Zara found her under the tree, deep in reflection. You're quiet today, Zara said, sitting beside her. I'm full, Alina whispered. I don't mean food. I mean here. She placed her hand on her chest. Zara's eyes softened. That's how you know you've been found. The two sat there for a long time. No noise, no rush, just the wind in the trees, and peace between two hearts that had learned to speak the same language without needing many words. That afternoon, Ustaza Fatima invited Alina to speak to the younger girls during a study circle. Alina hesitated at first, but the Ustaza gently encouraged her. Just share your story. In your own words. They'll understand. So Alina stood, her hands slightly trembling, as she faced a group of wide-eyed students seated in a circle. She began slowly. "I was once afraid of this place," she said. "Not this exact place, but everything it represents. Islam. Muslims. Hijabs. Mosques. I thought they were all symbols of oppression." A few girls nodded, listening carefully. "But I was wrong. So wrong. No one here ever tried to change me. They just showed me what peace looks like, and I realized I wanted it." She paused, eyes glossy. "I didn't convert because someone forced me. I embraced Islam because it embraced me first." The girls smiled and applauded softly, not out of celebration, but out of shared understanding. Alina sat down, heart pounding, but filled with a sense of victory, not over others, but over her former self. That evening, as the sky turned orange and the call to Maghrib prayer echoed from the mosque, Alina stood near the ablution area, unsure. Zara noticed and came beside her. "Would you like to try?" she asked gently. Alina nodded. "Will you show me again?" Together, step by step, Zara helped Alina perform wudu, the Islamic ritual of purification. Washing her hands, mouth, face, arms, each motion deliberate, each drop of water like a tear of cleansing. When she wiped her wet hands over her head and finally her feet, Alina smiled. "I feel light," she said. "That's how it's supposed to feel," Zara replied. Inside the mosque, Alina joined the congregation, this time at the back, following silently. She copied Zara's motions carefully, standing, bowing, prostrating. Her body moved, her lips whispered, her heart opened. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. After the prayer, no one clapped, no one congratulated her. They simply greeted her with quiet smiles and respectful nods. And that meant more than any ceremony ever could. Later that night, Alina sat in her room, flipping through the pages of her notebook. So much had changed in just a short span. And yet, it didn't feel rushed. It felt guided. She wrote one more entry. "I came here angry. I leave here whole." The next day, Zara took her on a walk through the surrounding village. They passed children flying kites, elders sipping tea, and women picking herbs from a small garden. Many greeted them with smiles. "She's our new sister," Zara told a group of curious children. Alina blushed, but she felt proud. As they walked, she noticed the beauty in everything: small flowers on the roadside, chickens darting between wooden fences, the echo of the azan bouncing between rice paddies. All these things had once been foreign. Now they were home. That evening, Ustaza Fatima approached her on the mosque porch. "There is one last thing," she said kindly. Alina tilted her head, curious. "You'll need a new name if you wish." Alina thought deeply. She didn't want to erase who she was. But she wanted to honor the journey. "Then, I want to keep Alina," she said. "But can I add something to it?" "Of course." "Alina Nur." "Nur," Ustaza smiled. "The light." They embraced. From that moment on, she wasn't just Alina the visitor. She was Alina Nur, the light. The morning sun cast a soft, golden glow over the courtyard of the boarding school. Dew clung gently to the grass, and birds chirped sweetly from the trees as if to celebrate a new beginning. Alina Nur stood quietly in front of the small wooden mirror in her room, adjusting her white scarf with careful fingers. Her reflection looked the same, and yet not at all. She saw new eyes. Eyes softened by reflection. Strengthened by faith. Freed from fear. She wasn't dressing for a ceremony, nor for anyone's approval. She simply wanted to step into this day with intention, with purpose. Outside, the school was already awake with joyful chaos. Students were sweeping, chatting, arranging books for the morning lessons. But they all paused and smiled when they saw Alina. They didn't just see a foreigner anymore. They saw a sister. Later that morning, Alina helped Zara in the kitchen, just as she had on so many days before. But today, the laughter felt lighter, the movements more in sync. The little flour fights, the taste tests, the whispers over spices, it was a rhythm only sisters shared. After breakfast, the girls gathered in the courtyard for Qur'an study. Zara invited Alina to join them, as always, and this time she sat without hesitation. She listened to the words not just with her ears, but with her heart. Every verse felt like a reminder that she was now part of something much greater than herself. When her turn came to read a short verse from the English translation, her voice trembled slightly, but held steady. Indeed, those who believe and do righteous deeds, the Most Merciful will appoint for them affection. Surah Maryam 19 hours 96 minutes. Ustaza Fatima nodded with a tender smile. That verse suits you, she said. Alina blinked away emotion. It found me. That afternoon, Alina and Zara walked the familiar path that edged the rice fields. It was the same road where fear once clutched her heart. But today, it felt like holy ground. They talked about the future, what Alina would do, where she would go, how she would hold on to everything she had learned. You'll go back to Russia? Zara asked gently. Alina paused. Eventually. My parents, they don't know yet. They won't understand. But I want to tell them myself. When I'm ready. Zara squeezed her hand. You don't have to have all the answers, she said. You just have to be honest. That night, after the Isha prayer, Alina sat alone under the large tree in the courtyard. Stars glittered above like diamonds on velvet. The cool air hugged her gently. She opened her notebook, now nearly full, and began to write again. I used to be afraid of silence. Now I find God in it. She closed her eyes and let the stillness hold her. Everything she had once feared, prayer, hijab, Arabic verses, even kindness, had now become her compass. She wasn't searching anymore. She was walking a path. The next morning, Alina sat with Ustaza Fatima on the mosque porch. A quiet moment passed between them before Alina spoke. I want to stay here longer, if that's okay. Ustaza nodded. As long as you need. This is your home too now. Alina smiled, grateful beyond words. Over the following weeks, Alina took on more responsibility, not by demand, but by desire. She helped younger girls with basic English. She organized the kitchen. She began learning more about prayer, about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and about the companions whose stories moved her deeply. One morning, a new guest arrived at the school, a quiet Frenchwoman named Claire who had come to volunteer and explore faith. Nervous and unsure, she reminded Alina of herself. So Alina approached her gently, offering tea and kind eyes. I used to feel lost too, she said. You're safe here. Claire smiled, her hands trembling slightly as she took the cup. In Alina's presence, she felt ease. And in that moment, Alina realized something important. Her journey wasn't just for herself. It was a bridge, for others to cross, for hearts to find light. She had become what Zara had been to her. One evening, the girls gathered around Alina with a surprise. A small celebration, not extravagant, just heartfelt. Zara presented her with a handmade wooden plaque carved with Arabic and English. Alina Nur, from stranger to sister. Alina held it to her chest, unable to speak. Her heart swelled with love for each of them. They had accepted her before she understood herself. And now, they were celebrating her not for what she had become, but for who she had always been, someone searching for truth. That night, as she packed a small bag for her upcoming trip to the city, her first step toward sharing her new identity with the world, she felt no fear. She only felt purpose. On the morning of her departure, the students lined up in the courtyard to hug her, one by one. Zara stood last. You'll come back? She asked, almost like a child. Alina smiled through her tears. I'll never leave. Not really. Zara placed a small Qur'an in her hands. For your heart. So you never forget who you are. With her bag on her shoulder and her scarf fluttering in the breeze, Alina walked toward the same wooden gate she had once entered in fear. She paused, turned around, and looked back. The small school. The mosque. The girls waving at her. The tree. The memories. Her eyes stung, but she was smiling. She had found faith in a place she once feared. She had found family in a place she didn't expect. And most of all, she had found herself.